Meanwhile, residents of Yelewata community in Guma local government area of Benue State have begun returning to their ancestral homes months after devastating attacks forced them into displacement in June 2025. The homecoming follows a massive reconstruction effort fueled by private philanthropists and a multi-billion naira resettlement project recently flagged off by the state government. While over millions of naira in private housing interventions and a 1 billion naira donation from the First Lady, Remi Tinubu, have provided new roofs for many, the returnees say the journey to full recovery remains still a challenging task.
We lack so many things: food, shelter, water, health. For the past year, a crop was not harvested here in Yelewata. Those that the people forced themselves to do within, not far distant, but were eaten off by the Fulani herders' cows. There were so many promises that they will rebuild the market and give us so many things here, but such things are yet to be done.
And our News Central's Sagir Ibrahim, who visited Yelewata, now joins us live from Makurdi, the Benue State capital. Sagir, now you mentioned that many houses have been rebuilt through private and government efforts, but what is the current state of the public infrastructure, like the schools and clinics, that these families desperately need?
Good afternoon, Blessings. It's in bad shape. It's in bad shape. We visited the primary school in the location, and we saw the state of infrastructure there. The chairs, there's not so many chairs, not to talk about the fact that the chairs are not in good shape. They are attached to the clips that have been sent and of course should be rolling on the screen. But also we went ahead to visit the health facility in Yelewata. Particularly the Kindred head had called on the government to possibly assist them in the community by converting that health facility, a very small health facility in terrible shape, from a primary health care center to a general hospital to at least cater, for the health needs of residents of these communities. He had described a terrible situation where they would have cases of accidents and that would not be able to be handled in this hospital. And then the Yelewata community is around 50 kilometers, exactly 50 kilometers away from Makurdi here, the state capital. And he had described situations of how they would sadly lose the patients who had been involved in either accident or who have had one form of health challenge or the other, simply because they had to transfer the patient from Yelewata community to the state capital, and during the process of transportation, the patient dies in the process. So these are issues, aside the fact that the community had suffered attacks from these bandits, had been displaced and dislodged because of this attack by these bandits, had been in IDP, internally displaced persons camp, for over 6, 7, going to 8 months now, but thankfully have now returned. But then returning back to the community is also a challenge on its own because of the fact that you have to rebuild. The government has provided help in terms of creating a layout for the recreation of a facility which would include homes, hospitals, and of course new schools. But the question here is how long that is going to take, before it's completed and before all of these IDPs who are settled somewhere on a temporary basis would be able to return. A classical issue in point also is the fact that the market was also burnt down during these attacks. If there is no market, this community is an agrarian community, so it means that they have to find another means, aside the fact that they couldn't even cultivate any products, during the course of these attacks, which means that the entire planting season for the year of 2025 was lost to these communities, and then the livelihood which comes from farming was also lost as a result. So it's just a cycle of challenges upon challenges upon challenges for these communities, and they have called for improved investment in terms of government intervention so as to improve their lives and of course help them rebuild and pick the pieces of whatever is left. Blessings.
Clement Losh did make a passionate plea for the rebuilding of the community market. How critical is this specific project to the economic survival of the returning residents?
Very crucial, Blessings, because like I had mentioned, I had alluded to earlier, it's a purely agrarian community. In agrarian communities, you cultivate during the rainy season, wait for the harvest season, you harvest, and then you look for a market where you take your products to, and then you can sell, to willing buyers at a price that is fixed by the seller and accepted by the buyer. But in a situation where there is no market, that is a crucial hub, for business and of course, for exchange of goods and of course services. So if there is no market in the community, it means that the responsibility of transporting goods, the responsibility of transporting products will be put on the farmers, who then have to go to other markets within communities that may be distant from Yelewata. That would come at a risk of perishable crops, which, they might lose, getting spoiled during the process of this transportation, among many other challenges that may ensue, including the increase or the rising cost, of transportation. So if there is no market, it means that they are not able to do business. And that's the reason why they had made the request for the government to help them reconstruct this market. They mentioned that the governor had visited, the Commissioner of Humanitarian Affairs had visited the market that was burnt. They had made promises that was going to be done, but since June 2025 up until this point, not much has been said, seen or done to the effect of reconstructing this market and getting the farmers and traders back to the spots to continue doing their businesses and thereby continuing with the means of their livelihoods.
So, Sagiru, with residents still expressing concerns about the difficulty of life despite improved security, what are the local authorities actually saying about the timeline of completing the multi-billion-naira resettlement project?
As a matter of fact, Blessings, we visited that resettlement and we can confirm that work is on. We saw a couple of structures that have been erected in that layout, but the question is how long it's going to take for it to be completed and how soon it will be for these residents to come back to their communities. This is their ancestral homes, by the way, and they would rather stay here rather than anybody else. But how long is this going to take before they have themselves return back to their communities and then continue with their lives as it is? That's where the question is. Upon speaking with the contractor, he had mentioned that the initial phase, the pilot phase, is expected to provide about 60 housing units, and that 16 housing units has an initial completion period of around 3 months. So he had mentioned that between the commencement of the project and now and of course another 90 days, that they should be seeing the completion of that 60 units of housing, and hopefully residents will be able to move in and occupy those housing. But then it's a government project, so our eyes will be on the ground, our eyes would be peeled, our ears would be on the ground. We'll be observing to see, of course, whether this development is going to be completed, as he said, as a pilot phase, and of course follow-up project, which also includes the construction of a larger, around 398 housing units, which he said will be completed as soon as possible. But this pilot phase was mentioned to be completed within 3 months upon which the project started. So we are hoping that between now and 90 days, hopefully the project will be completed, and these residents, some of these residents, would be relocated to that site and of course would be allowed to continue with their life that was put to pause following the attacks that happened sadly on June 13th and June 14th. Blessings.
Thank you, Ibrahim, there giving us an update on the Yelewata rebuilding process. And definitely, like you said, our ears are peeled and our eyes are fixed to see how this turns out.